Sitara Salman. The never-ending pain inflicted on his body from being gruesomely tortured hours upon end. What was only a few hours felt like all eternity. The constant screams of begging for help, but no one coming to his rescue. He wanted to get his mind off from the pain by trying to revert his thoughts to being back home, where it was warm, cozy, and safe. His home where he laughed, smiled, and made everyone around him happy. The young man wanted to die surrounded by the people who he made smile and made him smile. All he wanted to do was return to that place, but reality hit him and he realized that he will never get to feel that joy again. He will never get to feel that warmth run through his body ever again. Unfortunately, he was going to die surrounded by the people who hated him, so much so that they cut his life short. I can only imagine how terrifying it must have been for him. The boy's name was Emmett Till, a 14-year-old boy who was morbidly murdered due to false accusations made by a white woman. The boy whose death sparked ambition in the eyes of African Americans, not just in the South, but in the North as well. His murder would not have caught the attention it deserved if it weren't for his mother, Mamie Till. The publicity on his death provoked the upsurge of activism and defiance of the civil rights movement, and Emmett Till became the key to the change necessary at the time. His passing is still very much talked about even today. Him and his mother created that much of an impact, and you cannot talk about the upbringing of the civil rights movement without putting to light that Emmett was one of the main inspirations for the organization. The education systems in many schools across the country don't tend to acknowledge Emmett Till's story, but always deem the civil rights movement to be the most important event in African American history. Although that may be partially true, these events stem from smaller branches that influenced them. Emmett Till's murder was one of those branches. To completely get students to understand the struggles of African American history, the curriculum must embed Emmett Till's murder into school systems. Students must understand the obstacles and trials people of color endured before the victory of finally having our voices heard after the civil rights movement. It took great trials to get to this point. This will result in students hopefully understanding the trials of Black people a little deeper. It is clear that certain states find the murder of Emmett Till to be too gruesome to teach younger students. To bring awareness to what happened to her son, Mamie Till had a popular magazine, Jet Magazine, post a photo of his mutilated body, which ultimately was put on the cover of the latest issue. People of all ages seen the true nature of the horrors inflicted on Emmett. She did this so she will not be the only one who would have to accept the reality of what could happen to any Black child. She wanted people to know that this was reality for her, and this is what the world truly is. And she was not going to hide or tuck away the horrors Black people faced all the time, regardless of innocence. Mamie wanted everyone to see. Furthermore, unsolved murders were happening everywhere at the time to boys even younger than him. Emmett's was just especially different because of the light his mother shed on his death. Black parents at the time made sure to take extra precautions even more than before for their children to prepare them to be able to manage the segregated world around them. Emmett's death was a symbol that no matter the age, anything can happen when you are Black. White people can still accuse you for anything, even if your innocence is proven, since it's a power thing. The Black voices of back then were very weak against the white voice. The Black community at the time now understood that white people would treat Black children just as harshly as Black adults. The people in charge of teaching the curriculum in schools are already tied with the reality that African American topics already talked about are just not enough. Only a small percentage of Black history has been required to be taught in schools. Board members who create the curriculum are fully aware that some families feel as though the African American curriculum that is required to be taught to students is too small and should be expanded. Whether they believe that or not, the voices behind the curriculum, however, may find that what they teach already is compact with only the notable events in history, in which they believe that that is the only things necessary to teach. Also, certain events that occurred in history may be too harsh or too much for younger students to manage. Still, this does not mean that teachers should not teach certain topics at all in their school careers. Simply wait until students grow into a more mature grade level, such as high school or even middle school, to teach them. The curriculum should expand with not only knowledge, but also the deeper contents of Black history to the higher grade level. There are some faces behind the school system that wish to go against these wishes and influence students as much as they can. However, to what measure? A charter school in Los Angeles in 2007 decided to hold an assembly of achievement to celebrate the certain events in history for their students. Two seventh grade teachers allowed for their class to put together a poem honoring Emmett Till. This resulted in those teachers being fired by the principal of the school due to the topic being too mature for younger audiences. These are middle school students. At this age, students are familiar with the hindrance Black people face for centuries. What students must realize, and is vital to know, is that what they already have been taught is like slavery and the advocates such as Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks is not the only history that people of color went through. The executive director of the charter school not only disapproved of teachers allowing students to speak on or to hear about Emmett Till's case, but also deemed Emmett Till the perpetrator of sexual assault. It is evident that the charter school officials see this more as a personal issue than concern of the students. The truth about this concern just hasn't been fully revealed. Then there is critical race theory. The theory conveys the understanding of racism and inequality in America. People of color refer to the critical race theory when speaking about America's history. There is no doubt Black people shape every aspect of this country. However, white people tend to brush over this approach due to the belief that all it is people of color berating white people for our misfortune. Many avoid the topic and ignore the truth. Overlooking Emmett Till's death in school is very similar to this theory. Whenever students do speak on this issue, teachers tend to avoid mentioning the false, or whenever schools do speak on this issue, teachers tend to avoid mentioning the false accusations made by a white woman that caused the boy's death. They do not want to claim Emmett Till's death as their fault. Mamie Till bringing awareness to what happened to her son was not to put the blame on white people, but to hold them accountable for what they have done. The Black community would no longer stand for this, and this is what caused the spark in activism. This false narrative that people of color are solely blaming white people for our obstacles for equality is one of the very reasons why certain events are not added to the curriculum in schools. If the school officials of this charter school in Los Angeles see this discussion on Emmett as berating or genuinely believe that he is guilty, then this conveys the true nature of how white people truly deem this case and its contents. This is also systematic. Emmett's murder did not happen that long ago. Many still continue to have this mindset of years to come if people continue to have their way and nothing changes. If school officials simply took the time to teach students at the ages of middle school and higher the significance of certain eras in Black history, such as Emmett Till's case, students would get a better understanding of the calamity of the hardships African Americans endured in the past. The higher the grade level, the more information students can take. Schools do not have to dump tons of knowledge about Black history on immature students. Schools do not even have to teach the graphic things. However, it is critical that they get all of the major events in history out the way first, then teach students the smaller, impactful things after. Middle school students and higher are mature enough to learn about the dark events. There would be no need to sugarcoat anything. It will also be up to the students to believe or support what they want and not up to the teachers. Discussing the graphic details of Emmett Till's case is way too mature for elementary school students to learn about. There are certain points in there that even mature adults can barely manage. Instead of teaching the fully detailed story to younger students, educators can brush over his case a bit and save the detailed bits for when students get older. Emmett Till's horrific murder was but just one of the events in Black history that shook many to their core even till this day. Shedding his murder to light allowed for many to get a grasp of what injustice meant within the justice system, what it means to be Black in America, and it conveyed one of the greatest voices to speak on the issues of racism and inequality. If the school system requires all schools, or at least many schools, to require Emmett Till's death into their curriculum, then this will get students to comprehend Black history a little deeper than just a school lesson. Black children would hopefully see desegregation as less of a privilege and more of a right. They can wear their skin more proudly. Children of all ages could see that Black history is more than meets the eye.